Hi, and welcome to this discussion brought to you by The Wire on the political and economic impact of demonetization. It's been 2 weeks roughly since the so-called surgical strike on black money, the way that the Prime Minister and his supporters would describe his initiative to demonetize, or to use a phrase that the Supreme Court used, carpet bombing of the economy. It's been 2 weeks. What has been the economic and political impact? A lot really, has yet to play out. But one thing that is already quite clear is that the opposition has zeroed in on this move of the Prime Minister and the kind of chaos that it has generated, at least in the short term and perhaps the medium term, to put the government on the back foot. So we will discuss this broad subject in the next half an hour. If you are watching this on Facebook, feel free to type in your questions in the comment section. Ask anything you want about the politics and economics of the demonetization move, and me and my colleague M.K. Venu will attempt to answer your questions. So fire away, and we will set the ball rolling by Venu perhaps describing broadly the political terrain today. A lot depends on, it's clear that the Prime Minister has taken this very bold move. It's a risky move. We can criticize it for being poorly thought out, badly implemented. If it succeeds, then there are rich political dividends. If it doesn't, there are problems. How do you think the politics of this is going to play out in the next couple of weeks?
It's interesting, Siddharth. The first two or 3 days after the Prime Minister announced demonetization, really took the nation by surprise. All political parties, without exception, supported the move. As days passed and as the lack of preparedness of the government got exposed, the fact that 85% of the currency being pulled out of the system, and the fact that it will take about 6 months to replace it, 4 to 6 months. The most optimistic estimate is 4 months. And the fact that the economy, as days passed, it became clear that the economy, the informal economy was really crashing with economic activity across the spectrum, falling by 50, 60 to 70%. The opposition completely changed its stance, and some opposition leaders like Mamata Banerjee, Kejriwal were much quicker off the block, and they took to the streets. Again, when they did, the Congress was not entirely convinced, not with them. They marched to the President's office some days ago, a week ago, when Parliament opened. But now you see the situation today, all the opposition parties are out on the streets, and there is a resolve that on 28th of November, there will be an all India protest. So the coordination among the opposition parties is of a very, very high order today. And the fact that it is hurting the poor badly, and the fact that the economy in the next 6 months probably will grow at less than 3% GDP, wide consensus among economists. Jean Drèze has said that this scale of demonetization is like shooting at the tires of a racing car. So there is an across the board consensus that the informal economy will be very badly hurt. I think the opposition is now focusing on that.
But Mr. Arvind Panagaria, who's head of the Niti Aayog, he said, I think as recently as yesterday, in other words, after the demonetization crisis began, that growth would still be 6 to 7%. Is that over-optimistic?
Nobody believes Arvind Panagaria's numbers. In fact, there is a consensus among economists that in the October, November, December quarter, there will be a contraction because of the fall, the way the economy has crashed. This quarter, most people think it will contract. There will be some recovery in 2017, but the effects will be there for a year at least. Most columnists, most economists are of the view that the GDP deceleration would definitely be of the order of, say, at least 2% percentage points. And if that happens, yesterday Monte Carlo was on on Karan Thapur's show, where he said what is being underestimated is even if the GDP growth, you may say that GDP growth deceleration by 2 percentage points or 3 can be sort of absorbed, but its impact on the informal economy, on the construction sector, is being vastly being underestimated by this government. The job losses that will happen, on top of, mind you, on top of job growth being already being negative. The Labour Department's job growth figures are nothing much to write home about.
Yeah. You know, one of the interesting aspects of the politics of the demonetization process has been the Prime Minister's direct appeal, going over the heads of his party people, over the head of Parliament, over the heads of opposition, and directly speaking to the people. Right? There was his his address on November 8th, which set the tone. Yeah. But subsequently, we've seen 2 or 3 speeches that he's made where he has, his eyes have welled up and he's gotten emotional. He's now floated this initiative of getting people to download his app and answer a very loaded set of questions, at least one of which has been framed in such a way that if you are at all critical of what the Prime Minister has done, then in some way you are a supporter of those who have black money. So he is obviously playing to the gallery here, playing on people's sentiment that they wanted something decisive done against black money.
Yeah.
But and I think for that reason he is refusing to accept the opposition's demand that he speak in Parliament, because that would be to engage with the opposition perhaps at a level where he's not comfortable. He would much rather speak directly to the people and play on their aspirations, prejudices and fears. But do you think at some stage the Prime Minister would be forced to address some of the concerns that people are airing across the country, or do you feel if the RBI is able to print and circulate enough currency notes of the new denominations, this crisis will automatically take care of itself?
So Siddharth, you're right. The PM's response is operating at 2 levels. At one level, the train has left the station and it's running full speed. He's not going to back down on this. In fact, he has said that this is the first step towards attacking black money. Much bigger steps are coming in due course. There's a lot of speculation that he may outlaw possession of gold beyond a limit. He may go for. There's a big criticism of the PM that he's not done anything to attack the nexus between big business and election funding. He's talked about election funding reforms. So clearly he's moving, progressing faster on this path. At the same time, he's also aware of the opposition's charge that in the medium term, 6 months term, the poor are being very badly hit. So he's also giving small reliefs, like farmers can buy seeds with cash, 500 rupee notes from designated public sector seed outlets. Maybe he'll come up with a few other measures to lessen the impact on the informal sector. There is some talk that the cooperative banks, he may relax norms for cooperative banks to help farmers.
Well, it's quite astonishing that they never factored this in.
Yeah,
because you consider a state like Kerala or even UP or Punjab, which are going to the elections. I mean, cooperative banks are important parts of the.
He didn't. Siddharth, the politics there is that the PM was. The PM's intention was to squeeze regional parties, which seem to have control over cooperative banks. And if regional parties had political funds in cash. Right. It would be easy for them to go and change it from the cooperative if they have control over the management. Right. Whether it's Sharad Pawar's control over Maharashtra cooperative banks, Mulayam Singh's in UP, Kerala, in other places. So I think, but that narrow consideration seems to have trumped the
equity argument.
Equity argument. The bigger need of farmers for funds.
Okay, now we've got the first of a few questions coming in, and I'll just go through these one by one. Nakul Singh Sahani asks, many have said that the total black money in cash is barely 5%. So is this move really worth the hardship the poor are being put through? In the best case scenario, how much black money will be recovered by demonetization? And in a way, we are really guessing because there aren't any firm estimates, right?
There are estimates.
Or they're guesstimates at any rate. I mean, to your mind, in terms of, because what Nakul Singh is getting at is really how valid was the argument underlying this initiative in the first place?
See, Arun Jaitley, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, to answer Nakul's question, has estimated that about 25% of the total cash which is being replaced would not get extinguished, and the owners of this cash, black money, will not come forward to surrender it. So it will get extinguished. So that will be the cushion that RBI may have to then give it to the government for funding. But
so we're talking about roughly 300,000 crore?
3 lakh crore is what
Right.
Arun Jaitley is talking about. But going by the present trend, it's very interesting. 6 lakh crores have already come into the system, and by the deadline, 31st December, it is expected that another 6 or 7 may come. So eventually, there may just be 1 lakh crore. Lot of people are saying, which would turn out to be black component, which doesn't get extinguished.
Yeah.
So that will be quite embarrassing for the government if it is just 1 lakh crore for which you do so much damage to the
and which reflects
economy.
the argument economists have been making that black money is a process, it's a flow, not a stock.
Yeah, it's a flow.
And that the cleverer among the black money generating people have already managed to convert their black money into other kinds of assets which are not touched by this.
Yeah, it's
by
moved
this
into gold. Gold price have gone up. They pushed it into some genuine transactions, backdating it into the books of various businesses. So you might see transactions in September and October going up. You know, so there could be all kinds of jugaad that you may see in due course as data comes out.
You know, I wonder if the Prime Minister, kind of anticipating this argument or anticipating this development, is not shifting gears slightly, because yesterday in his reported remarks to the BJP Parliamentary Party, he spoke about how this was an initiative against terror, against counterfeit money. Definitely, when it comes to counterfeit money, we can hope that the Nakli 500 or 1,000 rupee notes, which were emerging as a problem, that will certainly be weeded out of the system. So that's definitely a positive.
But that can always come back again.
Well, I suppose, I mean, we hope that in due course the new 2,500 rupee notes will have the added security features that the RBI initially said that they would have. But terror financing, I mean, there was initially a lot of optimism that certainly terrorist groups will have their own stocks of 1,500 rupee notes will be extinguished. But
the one terror group,
there was yesterday there was this case in Kashmir where somebody
2,000 rupee notes.
Exactly,
I have not pulled out a single 2,000 rupee notes from my ATM so far. so the Kashmir groups have got it.
So I wonder if, and of course many of the counter-terrorism experts also are arguing that you fight terror through essentially security means, and that the fight against this black money will be only a very, very small part of it.
Actually, Siddharth, I want to say something here. I think Prime Minister Narendra Modi knows that there will be a lot of economic pain in the next 6 months to a year, and he is going to suffer negative consequences of that. Therefore, what he's doing is he's raising this whole attack on black money and trying to dovetail it into a larger issue of national security, nationalism, if you have, terrorist threat, and it's and look at his statement. Yesterday he said, "Agle saal naya Bharat aapko dikhega."
Yeah.
So he's talking about a national renewal. So I think he's trying to up the ante to a more philosophical level of national renewal.
Right.
But what is to be seen is whether the opposition is also now trying to sort of do a mass campaign, all India campaign, whether the pain that people suffer, the economic pain, will be overcome. Whether this great slogan of national renewal will be enough to overcome that pain.
Right.
And whether Modi will be able to carry the whole all of Indian population or voters along with him.
Right. So Sonu Pappachan asks, in a way we've addressed this. He says, "I'm from Kerala. The central government doesn't give financial status to cooperative sector just like commercial banks. They were the backbone of middle class people of Kerala. I want to know your comments on this." We've in a way already spoken about how cooperative banks have been included in this.
There is no argument for choking cooperative banks, because they are the lifeline for rural India, and rural India is the worst sufferer in this economic contraction of an unprecedented order.
So just that our viewers and readers understand, cooperative banks are not going to be able to exchange the old currency for new,
not
accept those deposits.
Not as yet. They're not opening it.
So if you have an account only with the cooperative bank, then you are effectively stuck with your bad notes.
Here, Siddharth, I want to point out another interesting development.
Yeah.
Microfinance institutions are very, in the south of India particularly, very robust. Even those people are not, they have gone to the RBI saying that please allow us to to take back 500 repayments of 500,000 notes from the people, because microfinance repayment cycles are weekly.
Right.
It is not like the big business which which makes half yearly payments to banks.
Okay, now there's Sayan Banerjee says, what are the possible long-term positive and negative effects of demonetization, keeping in mind the way it was executed? And I will dovetail this with a question by Muhammad Shariq Siddiqui, who says, what are the best and worst possible outcomes of this move? Let's look at the best outcomes. I mean, what's in a best case scenario, what's the positive impact that this move is going to have for the economy?
In the best case scenario, over the longer run, there is short-term pain, that there is absolutely no doubt about it. But over the longer run, that is after a year, you could have a much cleaner financial system. You could have many more people
in the
actually doing in the banking system. You could have banks having more funds. Interest rates could come down. There'd be that could be good for the economy, and the government could end up with an extra 1 or 2% of GDP of fiscal space, which will help them spend more on healthcare, infrastructure, social and physical infrastructure. That's the best case scenario.
And that would come about because money that is not returned, because it's essentially unaccountable money.
That the RBI
can write that off.
That in turn will be RBI's profits, which they can give to government as dividends.
Right. Now, and what about the worst case scenario? The worst possible outcome that could follow from this?
The worst possible outcome is that the shock that the economy has taken, especially the informal sector, the rural sector, it lasts, the economic contraction and the deceleration of GDP lasts more than a year. So you get 2 years of subpar, maybe 4% GDP growth, and the kind of havoc it will wreak on the economy, on jobs. I don't think this government will be able to recover from that, and we will be, by the time they recover, it will be 2019. So one doesn't know how that pans out.
Okay, Purushottam Achamwad asks, suppose out of the rupees 14 lakh crore that was in circulation in high denomination bills, only up to rupees 10 lakh crore gets back in the banks. What happens to GDP then? And will there be no more black money? Do all transactions done without billing fall in the domain of black money?
So what happens then is that in the cash component of the GDP, the black money, if 10 lakh crores come into the system, that means 4 lakh crores will get extinguished. So the government will have the benefit of this component, black component of the cash, the currency stock, and that can be used by the government for various spending, social and infrastructure spending, or even to recapitalize banks, as some people say.
But isn't there a controversy about the ease with which that money can be transferred into the fisc?
There is a controversy because the former finance minister P. Chidambaram has told the Wire that under the RBI Act it's not so easy to transfer it. Even the former RBI governor Dr. Y.V. Reddy has told me that current income can be transferred by RBI to government, but not accumulated reserves. Now, one doesn't know whether what the extinguished money which comes to RBI as a cushion, whether it will be treated as a historically accumulated reserve, or whether it will be treated as a current income. Some people say it can be put in a current profit and loss statement and then be transferred to the government. That remains to be seen. There's a legal issue there. There is also an issue of propriety there, because the world investing community views India's central bank as a solid, independently run central bank, and any perception that goes out to the world that the government is trying to manipulate the central bank will not be good for our economy, will not be good for our currency, will not be good for our markets.
But when the Prime Minister or the Finance Minister says soon interest rates will be slashed, you'll get the benefit, isn't that also in a way encroaching on the terrain of the
central bank? In fact, I would even go a little further and say that after Raghuram Rajan's exit, there is a sense that RBI is constantly being sort of, some would even say goaded by the government for various things to get, to sort of, influence monetary policy also, which is a question raised in Parliament today by the leader of the opposition in Rajya Sabha, Anand Sharma. He said, is monetary policy being conducted by the government these days? The way the statements are coming, as you said, from Modi, from Jaitley, that interest rates will definitely come down. So one doesn't know who's running monetary policy today.
In fact, if you look at the banking system, Venu, for a second, I mean, there's an interesting conundrum. You and I were talking about it earlier today, that there's going to be an interest cost that banks will have to bear for the 600,000 crore that has already come in.
Yeah, sure.
And the other money is going to come in, especially if they don't get reflected in immediate withdrawals, right?
Yeah.
And secondly, the ability of banks to actually extend loans.
Yeah.
We know that they've been, I mean, even before demonetisation, it's not as if, I mean, they've been reasonably flush with funds. It's just that the credit offtake, which is a factor of the overall health of the economy, has not been very
good.
Very good. So there's no guarantee that even with this new money being infused,
how much,
especially if there are negative growth consequences, whether this will actually lead to
absolutely.
higher lending.
In fact, there are many economists. Ila Patnaik, who works at the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, a finance ministry think tank. Yesterday, she told me in a chat that if the economy goes for a toss even in the short to medium term, the private investment sentiment, which is already down, can slip further. Now, if private investment sentiment doesn't recover, then how does credit pick up? So
even if lending rates come down,
so
it doesn't really help.
It doesn't help. Yeah. And to the other point that you raised, it's true that banks have received 6 lakh crore rupees over the last 14 days, and those 6 lakh crores in 500 or 1,000 notes, which are lying with the banks, are yet to be replaced by the RBI with the new notes. As a result, banks are giving a 4% savings account interest to people who have deposited 6 lakh crore, but they're not able to deploy that. So it's a clean net negative impact on banks until RBI gives them new notes. So it's a loss that banks are suffering in this period.
Sunitha Reddy asks, I think this is a question many of us have felt, that do you think it would have been wiser to have demonetized only the rupee 1,000 note for a start? Also, how much of this whole exercise, which has devastated so many poor and middle class people, will have any positive outcomes? Should Modi have started with just the 1,000 rupee note?
Yeah, somebody told me that Raghuram Rajan had in fact advocated that you do it in 2 phases. Do 1,000. If they'd done just 1,000 rupees, barely 40-45% of the currency would have been withdrawn. And more importantly, the poor would have had the benefit of 500 rupee notes. They would have been using it freely. The impact would not have been so much on the poor. It would have been politically been far wiser for Modi to have done that. And today, by giving such a big shock, I think the poor are really reeling from it, and you don't know what political impact it will have in the UP elections. One has to wait and see. Yeah.
But if we turn to politics more explicitly, Venu, one is hearing a lot of anecdotal stories or anecdotes of people's willingness to go along with this, even though they say yes, hum bahut takleef mein hain, and they have horrendous stories of hardship. But at the same time, what is sustaining their will, as it were, is this belief that somehow the other Modi is punishing the fat cats, right? So the guys with black, so yes, we are suffering, but there is confidence among poor people. Or this is what we hear from anecdotes around the country, that
fat cats
are probably being squeezed even more. Now, will this remain at the level of perception? And if it does, then clearly Mr. Modi gains politically. Or will there be some sense in which after say 6 months or 8 months people realize that, hang on a minute, it's all back to business as usual, and that it's not as if the rich have become any poorer or their indulgence in black money has come down. I just wonder how the long-term political effects of this will play out.
I don't know, Siddharth. I think the best test for what you asked just now will be UP elections, because in the UP elections, I'm 100% certain that there is no BJP doesn't have a face yet. Modi will be the face, and he will go and try to explain to people what he has done, and on that basis, we will know whether they are with him or not with him. That will be the test. As far as black money regeneration is concerned, I think this government has to take many more steps to curb regeneration of black money, because as data points out, what they've attacked in the stock is barely 5% with cash. The rest of it is in gold, real estate. The remaining 85% is there. So you have to attack those through various other measures, tax measures. Incentivize people bringing their gold back into the stream, banking system. Those things are ongoing processes. I don't know when they will conclude, whether they have a policy framework in mind, one doesn't know.
You know, the very fact that we're debating which way the politics will fall eventually, to my mind, reflects a fatal miscalculation that Modi and the government made, which is that they didn't prepare adequately for this dramatic step. For example, had the decision been taken in a rational, calm and collected manner, say 8 or 9 months ago, and they had prepared adequate stocks of the new currency, so that in time for, say, the UP election, or maybe on the eve of the UP election, he could have announced this move against black money, and there would have been minimal disruption, right? I mean, would you agree with me that if there was, let's say they were pulling out 86% of cash balances, and they were ready with 75 to 80% of the new currency notes on day one, none of these negative economic effects that we're seeing would have materialized, and it would have been a clear political win.
Actually,
so what explains? I mean, why?
You're absolutely right, Siddharth. But I wonder whether I'm sure Modi would have known what you just said. It is so commonsensical. So therefore, I'm persuaded to think that Modi's today, Prime Minister Modi's objective is something else. It is the bigger politics. He wants to rise, mind you, with these measures he's hurt his own party people also, his own trader community which supports the BJP. So he's trying to emerge as a sort of insurgent even within his own system. So he's trying to be a kind of Mrs. Gandhi, Indira Gandhi that she was in 1969.
So your back nationalization.
Yeah, 1969 when she tried to she broke the Congress and she got a larger coalition of parties to support certain measures. I think Modi's trying to do that. He's trying to. I'm not saying that he's trying to break the BJP, but he's also even within the BJP he's trying to disrupt. That it's very clear.
So it's a kind of meta politics in the sense that, you know, regardless of outcome, his gamble is that this is going to pay dividends. And people are going to say that here's a guy who doesn't mind taking a politically difficult decision, even if it means he's courting unpopularity for the greater good of the nation.
And within the party also.
And I think that's you know, of course, if the economy goes belly up or there's a serious dislocation.
So greater good is in his imagination.
Correct.
Now, whether his imagination plays out the way he
thinks.
thinks.
In fact, any professional economist will tell you that there is no greater good at the end of this, because the fact is that black money, unless you tackle the process of generating black money through the way the property market or various other things function, you're not really addressing this issue. But there's a question from Vishwesh Srinivasan, which also in a way reflects on a lot of what the Prime Minister has been saying, which is, what about the impact on Maoists and separatists and the future of funding of politics in India? I mean, we've seen some
across the board, even for instance, Naga, there are reports that Naga rebels are also trying to sort of get their notes changed. It will be a setback to various groups, insurgent groups around the country. But they also are in some ways linked to the local businesses, etc. So they could also do what some of the Hawala operators are doing. They, push it back into the books of some businesses,
especially since under the scheduled areas, many of the northeastern states, there's tax exemption
so
there.
One cannot imagine insurgents to be not connected with the larger businesses, larger civil society, political economy.
Exactly. Prakash Khavadia asked, and this is actually something that I've also wondered about. What is the real purpose of the 2,000 rupee note? What advantages does it have over the 500 and the 1,000? And here I want to bring in, the perspective of people like Larry Summers or Kenneth Rogoff. These are economists who've been advocating the killing of large denomination bills, right? I mean, Larry Summers says even the $100 bill should be gotten rid of. The Europeans have scrapped or are scrapping the 500 euro note. What's the logic then of having a 2,000 note?
Frankly, I didn't understand to the logic of 2,000 rupee note. Probably the only logic would have been, in their calculation, they thought that it will take less time to print. That could have been the logic.
But that's bizarre. I mean,
that's a very short-term kind of objective.
Because, and actually, from the point of view of, the mechanics of accumulating and transferring black money, assuming that black money is held in cash, which it isn't, the bulk of it isn't, but this in a way makes it easier, right?
In future, for instance, in UP, people will carry cash. So what they would, if they carry a large bag with 500 rupee notes, they'll carry 2,000, half the size of that bag. They'll carry the same amount. So it'll be much easier, greater mobility.
So instead of a suitcase, a jhola mein do.
Jhola mein do, absolutely.
Okay, Venu Arora is asking, are we looking at a recession next year as a result of this move? When you wrote that piece, where you quoted Ambit's data, quite an alarming piece, but I think now more and more people are talking about this possibility.
Because October to December quarter, clearly there could be a recession. And by IMF's definition, 2 quarters, as any sharp deceleration of GDP can be called a recession. It's not necessary that you need to have negative growth.
Right. And also the effects sector to sector are staggered. What's happening in one sector may be transmitted to another.
For instance, construction sector will definitely go through a longer period of recession because land markets will have dramatically sort of deflated.
If you are new to The Wire at this stage, I would just like to tell readers and visitors to our Facebook page that there's lots of rich analysis on the site. And reportage, Sabah Naqvi's account, for example, that we ran yesterday on the impact of demonetization on the cotton and textile sector. We have a great piece today also on the impact of demonetization on migrant labor. We have something coming up on the impact of the move on refugees who don't have ID cards and who don't have bank accounts. Plus, of course, the very granular accounts of the kind of problems people are facing around the country in getting their money changed and in finding cash for their day-to-day expenses. So do log in and read our content. There's a question from Manish Malhotra. What is the psychological impact on the poor of demonetization, where cash in hand is simply becoming... Do you think people are going to lose confidence in paper money, or is that too exaggerated an idea?
No, to begin with, Siddharth, not just the poor, even the middle class, we are all hoarding money. Are you spending the way you spent, say, 2 months ago?
Well, I have a 2,000 rupee note that I'm not able to spend because nobody will give me change.
So everybody is spending so carefully, and it's showing in the footfalls in the markets. I know somebody who works for Flipkart, and Flipkart had 65% of its sales in cash, and the bulk of it has collapsed. And mind you, Flipkart sells 2,500 crores average a month.
Right.
So that is the kind of impact that has happened to online retail.
Jupinder Singh Chauhan asks, actually it's quite a good question, and he says, do you think this move has something to do with big data? And I'm going to relate this to something that the legal scholar Usha Ramanathan has been saying. She, of course, is the leading critic of the UID of Aadhaar on grounds of privacy. And she's making an argument, or she's made this argument, that demonetization, insofar as it pushes people towards electronic transactions, helps the government generate a bigger set of data on who's spending what. The other day, in fact, at the ATM machine, the machine had no cash, but the slip that I got out said, we are unable to give you cash because you have not linked your account to your Aadhaar number. Now, that's something that I've resisted doing because I don't feel I need to share my Aadhaar number with the bank. But you think that somewhere down the line, consciously or unconsciously, the amount of financial and personal data that will be generated at the end of the day when the dust settles will be much greater as far as the government and the citizen is concerned?
It's a bigger philosophical question, Siddharth, whether the state, whether the big boss is watching you all the time, watching how you spend, watching on what you spend. People have strong views on this. And as far as cash economy is concerned, it's not as if some of the advanced economies don't have cash component. Japan's cash economy is 18% of GDP. I mean, it's just way higher than India's. It's clearly it's an economy that's 40 years ahead of us. So I think we should not become fundamentalist about pushing everybody into the non-cash cashless system overnight. So I think India has its own political economy, has its own habits. There is a need to go about it on a more democratic and voluntary basis.
Well, I think with that we will wrap up this discussion. It's been 2 weeks, as I said at the outset, and many of the effects of Prime Minister Modi's demonetization decision, whether economic or political, have yet to fully play out. Some of these effects, particularly on the economic sphere, will take several months to play out. When the dust settles, will it leave the economy in a better shape, as he hopes, or will it leave growth compromised in some way with higher unemployment,
Jobs,
as his critics fear? I think a lot of the political outcomes of demonetization will depend on exactly what happens in the economy. Thank you very much for watching, and do log in to The Wire to read our analysis and reporting.